Hey everyone, my name is Wedge, and today we're going to look at every single blue card spoiled from Theros over the weekend. Also, keep in mind for any card that was individually spoiled beforehand, you can check out our spoiler series in the description below. Let's go. The first card we're talking about today is a null. Yup, they bringing it back! This is a 1 blue counterspell for artifacts and enchantments. Gods beware. This card was insanely annoying when it was in Standard years ago in Mirrodin, and even years before that in Urza's Saga. Everyone was worried about the gods being really hard to kill, but you don't really have to worry about that when you can just stop them from coming into play with 1 blue mana. As a common! What a hoser! Next, we have Aqueous Form. 1 blue mana for an enchant creature aura. Enchanted creature can't be blocked, and whenever the creature attacks, scry 1. This is a pretty good card overall. 1 blue mana isn't a huge investment for unblockable. In addition, the guarantee of scry 1 every turn for free seems pretty good to me. It's 1 blue mana. In limited alone, this card really could go to work. Even in constructed format, you could stick this guy on a heroic creature and create a pretty fast clock, although that may be pushing the form's usability a bit too far. Benthic Giant is a 6 mana 4/5 hexproof. One simple word keeps him from being just another fatty. This guy is just a fatty, but with some built-in protection. Won't see constructed play, but he's a good blocker and attacker in limited. Avoids being messed with in a lot of ways. A card that could see play across formats is Breaching Hippocamp. The Deceiver Exarch Splinter Twin combo is hysterical in and of itself. However, how much funnier would it be if you added a Horsefish? Yeah. Look at him. He's really funny to look at. In all seriousness, this guy is more expensive than the Exarch, so that combo probably won't happen. But I couldn't resist pointing out he was a horsefish. Why not just call him a seahorse? Why? Coastline Chimera is a 4 mana 1/5 flyer. For 1 colorless and a white, it can block an additional creature this turn. I try to be optimistic with cards, but this one isn't easy. 4 mana for a 1/5 flying wall isn't great. Granted, it does stop beating flyers in their tracks, and you can pay 2 mana for it to stop 2 beating flyers. You can even keep paying mana to block additional creatures to your heart's content. This card is basically designed for my patented blue-white scry draw bestow win deck. He's a staller, that's what he does, he sits there. I don't know what else to say. Crackling Triton is a 3 mana 2/3 merfolk. For 2 colorless and a red, you can sacrifice him to deal 2 damage to target creature or player. 3 mana for a 2/3 is eh. 3 mana to blow him up for 2 damage is also eh. He's pretty eh. Not the worst card in this set, but I don't think he's ideal for much unless you are running Izzet and love sacking your own creatures. Which actually might be a thing. Those Izzet guys are weird. Next, we have Fate Foretold. 1 colorless and a blue for an enchant creature aura. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. When the enchanted creature dies, its controller draws a card. Well, here's our cantrip. It's at sorcery speed, and enchants our Omen Speaker, so it could be worse. I'm having trouble getting behind this too much because I'm so spoiled from Thought Scour and Think Twice. I know some people will play this card solely because it draws cards. I might be one of them. With cantrips as limited as they are now, this could see play somewhere. Yes! Griptide is back, one of my favorite draft cards. I cannot tell you how many times I've won entire tournaments on the back of Griptide and Grasp of Phantoms. 4 mana for an instant speed spell that puts target creature on top of its owner's library is amazing. Don't let anyone tell you different. Seriously, this card functions like a time walk more than you think. Your opponent gets to 5 mana, drops a Celestial Archon, you bounce at end of turn. Time walk. They essentially did nothing. Yes, I know it isn't exactly a time walk, but you are seriously setting them back, more than you think sometimes. You get to draw a card from your deck, they don't. It really is that good, just think about it. Horizon Scholar is a 6 mana 4/4 flying Sphinx. When he enters the battlefield, scry 2. This is a great limited card. Air Elementals are always good, and even though this guy costs a little more, single blue is easier to cast off of than double blue, and he scries 2 for you. This won't see any play in Standard because of its high cost, but in Limited, it will be in a lot of blue decks. Not the best card in the set by any means, but it'll be effective, so take it relatively early. Melita's Charlatan is 2 colorless and 1 blue for a 2/3. You can pay 3 mana and tap him to have the controller of target instant or sorcery spell copy that spell and optionally choose new targets for the copy. I always have trouble trying to gauge the power of these types of cards. In Standard, I think it's a bit too slow, but the ability is powerful, especially considering all of the cheap heroic enablers in Red specifically. This could work in some kind of blue-red heroic shenanigans deck. In the right strategy, this card could be good for limited, but you need the right package around it. Mnemonic Wall is a 5 mana 0/4 defender. When it enters the battlefield, you may return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. This is super expensive, and you probably aren't getting your mana's worth out of it. The ability is fine, and the toughness is fine for a wall, but 5 mana is a lot to spend on this. I'd much rather fill that spot with the Sphinx like we looked at before, or even an off-color removal spell. I get that this brings cards back, but you will most likely take an entire turn's worth of mana to do it. Really expensive. Prescient Chimera is 3 colorless and 2 blue for a 3/4 flyer. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, scry 1. My problem with this card is that scry 1 is really nice to have earlier in the game. I'm not saying it's bad at any point, but attached to a 5 mana body, it seems a little high costed. You are getting a 3/4 flyer to work with, so it's just under air elemental status, so it will probably see limited play, but he's still pretty expensive for his trigger. Sea God's Revenge is one of my favorite limited cards to be printed for blue. 6 mana at sorcery speed, you return up to 3 target creatures to their owner's hands, then scry 1. Yes, this is expensive and sorcery speed, but you are potentially wiping the board for a turn. This could provide some much needed breathing room. While clearly not the best card ever, I would run this in limited as it has the potential to alter the board state immediately on cast. Stymied Hopes is a 2 mana counterspell unless the spell's controller pays 1, then you scry 1. This is a fine counter. It would have performed pretty decent against a deck like Jund that loves tapping out to play huge stuff. Even now, it won't be that bad against aggro decks that tap out every turn until they have nothing else to play. Countering Domri Raid on turn 2 seems pretty good. This will see some play, don't underestimate it. Thassa's Bounty is 6 mana for a sorcery that draws you 3 cards. Then target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. This is no opportunity and is completely overshadowed by it. People also seem to forget about Thought Flare, and while that spell needs 2 distinct colors, it's still functionally better than the Bounty. I'm not hating the card because of its mana cost or its ability. I don't like it because it's a sorcery. These huge card draw spells only function well as instants. Divination can get away with it because it's still relatively cheap for a draw spell, but at 6 mana, there just isn't enough reason to spend your entire turn drawing a few cards. Triton Shore Thief is a 1 blue mana 1/2 vanilla creature. I've said this before, every set needs vanilla creatures, and there will be drafts where you are low on creatures. You will see this guy breathe a sigh of exasperation and sleeve him up. Triton Tactics is a 1 blue mana instant. Up to 2 target creatures each get +0/+3 until end of turn. Untap those creatures. At this turn's next end of combat, tap each creature that was blocked by one of those creatures this turn. They don't... What? Okay, this is really wordy. Let's try it this way. Basically, you buff up 2 of your guys by 3 toughness and you can untap them. When combat is over, any creature that one of them blocked get frozen. That is, it gets tapped if it wasn't already and doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So basically, they attack into you, you block with your punk dudes, they don't untap next turn. We good? We good. Wow, that's weird wording. The last blue card released is Vaporkin, a 2 mana 2/1 flying elemental. Vaporkin can block only creatures with flying, high flying as we like to call it. A 2/1 flyer for 2 is fine in limited play. It gets on the board quick and against the right deck will put them on a pretty fast clock, especially with an aura on it. Definitely limited playable. Probably won't see standard play, but that's just because the power level of other cards make this poor elemental look like nothing, when in fact it really isn't that bad. That's it for the rest of the blue cards in Theros. Which ones do you think were the best of the rest? Personally, I gotta go with Griptide. People never pick that card early enough, and I will punish them with it for the foreseeable future. As always, subscribe below for the latest and most reliable Theros information you could ever need. This is the Mana Source. I'm Wedge. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.